I thought I was smarter than this. 66 years old. A publisher. A man who built his career spotting lies on paper. But she didn't need paper. She just needed to smile. 6 weeks. That's all it took. £495,000 gone. And I let it happen. I landed at Manila airport on a Friday evening. The heat hit me like a wall when I stepped outside. London had been cold and gray for months. My wife Margaret had been gone for 8 months. Every room in our flat still smelled like her perfume. I couldn't breathe there anymore. I needed warmth. I needed distance. I needed to feel something other than the crushing weight of her absence. So I booked a flight, one way. I told myself it was just a holiday. But deep down I knew I was running. The hotel lobby was bright and clean, not fancy but comfortable, and there she was, Victoria, standing behind the reception desk with this smile that made me feel like I was the only guest in the building. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Manila." Her voice was soft, warm. I handed her my passport and she glanced at it. "Percival, that's a beautiful name." I laughed. "Most people just call me Percy." She looked up at me. "I like Percival better. It sounds distinguished." I felt something shift in my chest. When was the last time someone had made me feel distinguished? She checked me in and handed me the room key. "If you need anything at all, I'm here until midnight." I nodded and headed to the elevator, but I couldn't stop thinking about her smile, about the way she'd said my name. I unpacked my suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. No messages, no one waiting for me back home. My daughter lived in Sydney. My son barely spoke to me after Margaret died. He blamed me for not noticing the symptoms earlier. Maybe he was right. I went back downstairs, around 9. The lobby was quiet. Victoria was still at the desk, reading something on her computer. She looked up when I approached. "Percival, couldn't sleep?" I shook my head. "Jet lag, and I'm hungry. Is there anywhere nearby that's still open?" She smiled. "The restaurant here closes at 9, but I can have the kitchen prepare something for you if you'd like." I told her that would be wonderful. She made a call and then walked me to the restaurant area. We sat down together, just the two of us in that empty dining room. "So what brings you to Manila?" she asked. I hesitated. I needed a change. My wife passed away earlier this year. I just couldn't stay in London anymore. Her face softened. "I'm so sorry. That must be incredibly hard." And then she did something unexpected. She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Just for a moment. You don't have to be alone here. Manila can be overwhelming for foreigners. If you need someone to show you around or just talk to, I'm here." We talked for 3 hours that night. She told me about growing up in a small province north of Manila, about putting herself through college while working multiple jobs, about her dreams of traveling to Europe someday. I told her about my publishing career, about the authors I'd worked with, about Margaret and how we'd met at a book launch 40 years ago. Victoria listened, like every word mattered. When I finally went back to my room, it was past midnight. I lay in bed feeling something I hadn't felt in months: hope. The next day she wasn't working. I felt disappointed. I wandered around the city alone. Everything felt too loud, too chaotic. I returned to the hotel in the afternoon, and there she was. "Percival, I wasn't scheduled today, but I wanted to check on you. How was your morning?" I told her I'd felt a bit lost. She laughed. "Then let me be your guide. I finish at 6. Let me take you to dinner, a real Filipino restaurant, not the tourist places." That night changed everything. We went to this small place in Malat. The food was incredible. But more than that, Victoria made me feel alive again. She asked about my work. "What's it like being a publisher? You must have such a good eye for truth and lies, for what's real and what's fake." I smiled. "You'd think so, but I've made my share of mistakes." She leaned closer. "I doubt that. You seem like someone who sees right through people." By the 3rd night, we had dinner again. This time she took my hand while we walked back to the hotel. "I know this might sound forward," she said quietly, "but I really enjoy spending time with you. You're different from most foreign men who come here. You're genuine. I felt my heart racing. I enjoy your company too, more than I expected to. She smiled. Good. Because I'd like to introduce you to some people. Friends of mine. Successful people. I think you'd enjoy meeting them. I should have questioned it, but I didn't. I was too busy feeling wanted. Victoria introduced me to Miguel on Monday evening. We met at an upscale bar in Makati. He was around 50, impeccably dressed, with a Rolex that caught the light every time he moved his hand. Percival, Victoria has told me wonderful things about you, he said, shaking my hand firmly. She mentioned you were in publishing. That's a respectable career. Takes intelligence, vision. I felt myself sitting up straighter. I'd like to think I've developed a good sense for quality over the years. Miguel nodded. That's exactly what we need. People with discernment. We talked about London, about business, about opportunities in the Philippines. Miguel mentioned he was involved in real estate development. The market here is exploding. Foreign investment is pouring in, especially from the UK and Australia. There's a project I'm working on right now. Beachfront property in Batangas. We're building a residential resort. Very exclusive. I listened carefully. He wasn't pushing. He was just sharing, like he was letting me in on something valuable. The returns have been exceptional, he continued. We're talking 30 to 40% in 18 months. But we're selective about our investors. We want people who understand long-term value, people with credibility. He paused. Victoria thought you might be interested in hearing about it. No pressure, of course, but if you'd like to see the prospectus, I'm happy to share it. Victoria squeezed my hand under the table. Miguel has been incredibly successful. Several of my friends have invested with him. They've all done very well. I nodded slowly. I'd be interested in seeing the information. Miguel smiled. Excellent. Let me arrange a proper presentation. I'll bring my business partner Arturo. He handles the development side. And perhaps Camila, our legal consultant. She specializes in foreign investment law. Make sure everything is above board. We met again 2 days later, this time at a private office in BGC. Arturo was there, younger than Miguel, energetic and confident. He had a laptop with architectural renderings of the resort. We're targeting high net worth retirees, he explained. British, American, Australian expats looking for a tropical retirement destination, private villas, beach access, full amenities. The first phase is already 70% sold. Camila arrived shortly after. She was professional and precise. Mr. Whitley, I understand you're considering an investment. I want to make sure you understand the legal framework. Foreign ownership in the Philippines has specific regulations, but there are legitimate structures that protect your interests. I've reviewed all the documentation for this project. Everything is properly registered and compliant. They showed me contracts, site photos, financial projections, letters from other British investors. Everything looked professional, legitimate, but more than that, they made me feel included, respected, like I was part of something exclusive. Miguel leaned back in his chair. We're looking to close this investment round by next week. We have 3 spots remaining. Each position requires a minimum of £75,000. But given your background, Percival, I think you'd be a perfect fit for our consortium. I didn't commit that day. I told them I needed to review everything. But that night, Victoria came to my room. We'd been spending every evening together by then. She'd kiss me goodnight at my door but never came inside. Until that night. Can I come in for a moment? She asked softly. I let her in and she sat on the edge of my bed. I want to be honest with you about something, she said. Miguel asked me to introduce you to him. He knew you were staying at the hotel. He thought you might be interested in the investment. My stomach tightened. So this was planned? She shook her head quickly. No, not like that. I mean, yes, he asked me to introduce you, but everything between us, Percival, that's real. I wouldn't have spent all this time with you if I didn't genuinely care about you. She took my hand. I know you're probably thinking this is all too convenient, that maybe I'm just trying to help Miguel make money, but I'm telling you this because I don't want there to be any secrets between us. I like you, really like you. And I think this investment is legitimate. I've seen Miguel's other projects. They're real, but I need you to make your own decision. I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. I appreciate your honesty, I said quietly. She leaned forward and kissed me. Not a goodnight kiss, a real kiss. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. You deserve good things, Percival. You deserve to be happy again, and you deserve to be successful. You're not just some lonely old man to me. You're special. I transferred £75,000 on Tuesday morning. I sat in the hotel business center and logged into my bank account. My hands were shaking slightly as I entered the routing information Miguel had provided. This was a significant portion of my savings. Margaret and I had been careful our whole lives. We'd built this nest egg together. But what was I saving it for now? To die alone in that cold London flat? I clicked confirm. The money vanished from my account. I stared at the screen, waiting for some confirmation email, some receipt. Nothing came immediately. I told myself it was fine. These things take time. International transfers, banking procedures. I closed the laptop and went downstairs. Victoria was at the desk. When she saw me, she smiled. "Did you do it?" I nodded. She came around the desk and hugged me right there in the lobby. "I'm so proud of you. This is going to change your life." That night, Miguel and Arturo took us to dinner. Expensive steaks, champagne. Miguel raised his glass. "To Percival, welcome to the consortium. You've made a very wise decision." I felt powerful, relevant, like I was still capable of making bold moves. But when I got back to my room that night, I checked my email obsessively. Nothing from the law firm, nothing from the development company. Just a brief text from Miguel. "Transfer confirmed. Welcome aboard." I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that number. £75,000. Gone. Invested. I kept telling myself it was an investment, not a loss. But something felt wrong. I couldn't name it, couldn't define it. Just a whisper in the back of my mind. The next morning, I tried to push the feeling away. Victoria brought me coffee in the lobby. "You seem tense," she said. "I'm fine. Just waiting for the official paperwork." She nodded. "Miguel said everything will be ready by Friday. Legal documents take time here. The bureaucracy is slow." I forced a smile. "Of course," Arturo called me that afternoon. "Percival, I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to run something by you, a separate opportunity. Not related to the resort project." I felt my chest tighten. "What kind of opportunity?" He laughed. "Don't worry, nothing that requires immediate decision. But I'm working on a logistics venture. Importing British goods to Manila, high-end products. There's a massive market for authentic UK brands here. Tea, biscuits, clothing, home goods. Filipinos love British quality." He invited me to lunch the next day. Victoria came with me. We sat at a restaurant overlooking the bay, and Arturo laid out his business plan. "I have the distribution network, the warehouse space, the retail connections. What I need is a partner with capital and international credibility. Someone who understands British markets and can help source the right products." He showed me spreadsheets, projected revenues, photos of his warehouse facility. The initial investment would be £85,000. That covers the first shipment, import fees, marketing, and 3 months of operating expenses. After that, the business becomes cash flow positive. We're projecting returns of 50 to 60% annually. But more importantly, this gives you ongoing passive income. A reason to stay in Manila if you wanted to. Victoria's hand found mine under the table. "You'd be so good at this, Percival. You know publishing. You understand how to evaluate products, how to build distribution. This is perfect for you." I hesitated. "I just invested £75,000 with Miguel. I'm not sure I should tie up more capital right now." Arturo nodded understandingly. "Of course, I respect that. But think about it. This is a different asset class. The resort is long-term capital appreciation. This is active income, diversification." I told him I needed time to think. But that night, Victoria and I had our first real intimate moment. We'd been building toward it for days. She came to my room after her shift. We talked for hours. She told me about her father dying when she was young, about supporting her mother and siblings, about how hard she'd worked for everything she had. "I've never met anyone like you," she whispered. "Most foreign men here just want one thing. But you see me, really see me. We made love that night." At 66 years old, I'd convinced myself that part of my life was over. But with Victoria, everything felt new again. Afterward, she lay with her head on my chest. "I know Arturo's pushing you to invest. You don't have to. But I think it's a good opportunity. And selfishly, I like the idea of you having a reason to stay here. To stay with me." I transferred the £85,000 on Friday morning. Arturo met me at the bank to help with the paperwork. He shook my hand enthusiastically. "You won't regret this, partner. We're going to build something incredible together." Miguel was there too. 2 investments in 1 week. "You're not wasting any time, Percival. I like your style." That weekend, Victoria and I barely left my hotel room. We ordered room service, watched movies, made love. She told me she was falling for me. I told her I hadn't felt this way since Margaret. It felt true. It felt real. On Sunday evening, she got a phone call. Her face went pale. She spoke rapidly in Tagalog and then hung up. "What's wrong?" I asked. She was shaking. "It's my mother. She collapsed. They think it's a stroke. They're taking her to the hospital now." I held her while she cried. "I need to go. I need to be there." "But the hospital, they're saying she needs emergency surgery. They want payment up front before they'll operate. I don't have that kind of money." Oh God, what am I going to do? I felt my heart breaking for her. How much do they need? She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. 95,000 pesos. That's about 95,000 pounds. I know that's insane. I can't ask you for that. I shouldn't even be telling you this. I didn't think. I just acted. I'll transfer it, right now. Give me the hospital account information. She stared at me. "Percival, no, I can't let you do that. That's too much. We've only known each other 2 weeks. I grabbed my phone. Your mother needs surgery. We'll figure out the rest later. Just give me the account details." I sent the money within an hour. Victoria's hands were shaking as she sent the confirmation to her family. She called them back and I could hear the relief in her voice even though I couldn't understand the words. When she hung up, she collapsed into my arms. "You saved her life. You saved my mother's life. How can I ever repay you?" I kissed her forehead. "You don't need to repay me. I love you. And when you love someone, you help their family." She left for the hospital that night. I stayed in my room feeling like a hero, like I'd done something truly good. But as the hours passed and I lay alone in bed, a thought crept in. Why hadn't the hospital sent any confirmation? Why hadn't Victoria's family called to thank me? I pushed the thoughts away. Different culture, different systems. I was being paranoid. Victoria came back the next morning. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "The surgery went well. She's stable. The doctors say she'll recover fully. Percival, I don't know how to thank you. My whole family is so grateful." I felt that warmth flood back. "See," I told myself, "you did the right thing." But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. That evening, Miguel called. "Percival, can you meet me tomorrow? There's something exciting I need to discuss with you. A major opportunity. Bigger than the resort project." I felt exhausted. "Miguel, I'm not sure I can invest anything else right now. I've committed quite a bit already," he laughed. "Just hear me out. Trust me, you'll want to be part of this." We met at the same office in BGC. This time Arturo and Camila were both there. They had a presentation prepared. "We've been approached by a Malaysian development firm," Miguel explained. "They want to partner on a large-scale resort project in Palawan, 5-star hotel, private beach, marina, golf course. It's a £8 million project. They're bringing £5 million. We need to raise £3 million from our investor group to secure the land and begin development." Arturo pulled up architectural renderings. They were stunning. "This is different from the Batangas project. This is institutional-level development." The Malaysian firm has already secured commitments from 2 major hotel chains. This isn't speculative. This is guaranteed. Camila spread contracts across the table. I've spent the last week reviewing every document. The land title is clean. The Malaysian firm is publicly traded. Their financials are solid. This is as legitimate as it gets. Miguel leaned forward. We're raising the £3 million from select investors. Based on your previous commitments, we're offering you a position at £140,000. That gives you a 6% stake in the project. When we exit in 3 years, conservative projections put your return at £420,000. That's a 300% gain. I felt my head spinning. That's a massive amount of money. I need time to think about this. Miguel nodded. Of course. But I need to be transparent with you. We're closing this round by Thursday. We have other investors ready to take any remaining positions. I'm offering you this opportunity first because Victoria speaks so highly of you. Because we've built trust. But I understand if it's too much. Victoria was waiting for me when I got back to the hotel. She could see the stress on my face. What happened? I told her about the Palawan project. She listened carefully. That's a lot of money, Percival. You don't have to do this. I sat down heavily. But what if it's real? What if this is the opportunity of a lifetime and I'm too scared to take it? She sat beside me. Only you can make that decision. But I'll support you either way. That night I barely slept. I kept running the numbers. I'd already invested £160,000. If I added another £140,000, that would be £300,000 total, more than half my liquid savings. But if the returns were even close to what they projected, I'd be financially secure for life. I could stay in Manila, build a life with Victoria. Maybe this was my second chance. Maybe this was what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. Wednesday morning I met with Miguel again. I'm in, I said quietly, but I need to see everything. Every document. Every contract. I need to be absolutely certain, he smiled. Of course. Camila has prepared a complete due diligence package for you. Take your time. Review everything. We don't want you to feel any pressure. I spent hours going through papers. Everything looked legitimate. Official letterheads, notarized documents, bank statements from the Malaysian firm, photos of the Palawan site, letters of intent from hotel chains. But deep in my gut, something whispered. Something warned me. I ignored it. Because the alternative was admitting I'd already made terrible mistakes, and I wasn't ready for that. I transferred £140,000 on Thursday afternoon. Victoria kissed me when I told her, "This is your legacy, Percy. This is how you'll be remembered. Not just as a publisher, as a visionary, as someone who built something lasting." I wanted to believe her so badly. That night I stood on my hotel balcony watching the sunset over Manila Bay. I felt powerful and terrified at the same time. The next week everything accelerated. Camila called needing £30,000 for government clearances and permits. The Philippine bureaucracy is complicated for foreign investors. We need to expedite the approvals process. There are fees, processing costs. It's frustrating but necessary. I transferred the money. Arturo called 2 days later. The logistics business needed £40,000 for shipping and customs. The first container is arriving earlier than expected. We need to clear it through customs immediately or we'll lose the inventory. It's actually a good problem to have. It means demand is high. I sent the money. Then Victoria's brother needed £30,000 for medical treatment, emergency appendicitis. The family was already stretched thin from her mother's surgery. I didn't even hesitate. I just transferred it. Every time I sent money, Victoria thanked me. Miguel reassured me. Arturo sent updates. But nothing concrete ever came back. No receipts, no confirmation emails, no contracts. My bank balance was hemorrhaging. I'd gone from £500,000 to less than £10,000 in a month. I started to panic. I called Miguel. I need to see proof. Real proof. I need receipts from the hospital. I need shipping documents from Arturo. I need title documents from Palawan. I need something tangible. His voice was calm, soothing. Percival, I understand your concern. You've invested significant capital, but you need to understand how business works here. Things move slowly. Bureaucracy takes time. The paperwork is coming. I promise you. Arturo was equally reassuring. The customs clearance is in process. The moment I have the release documents, I'll send them to you. These things just take longer than expected in Manila. Camila said the government approvals were delayed but progressing. Everyone had an explanation. Everyone had a reason. And Victoria held me each night and whispered, "Trust us. Trust me. This is all going to work out." But I could feel it slipping away. I could feel the truth pressing against my denial. I checked my bank account obsessively. £5,000. That's all I had left. £5,000 from nearly $500,000. I sat in my hotel room shaking. How had this happened? How had I let this happen? Friday night, Victoria said she needed to visit her mother in the province. "I'll be back Monday, I promise. I love you, Percival. Everything is going to be okay." She kissed me and left. I watched her walk out of the hotel lobby, and something cold settled into my chest. I didn't hear from her Saturday. I called. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. I called Miguel. His number was disconnected. I called Arturo. Disconnected. I called Camila. The law office number led to a generic voicemail. I felt my hands shaking. No. No, no, no. This isn't happening. Sunday morning I went to the hotel front desk. A different receptionist was working, a young man I'd never seen before. "Excuse me, is Victoria working today?" He looked confused. "Victoria? No one by that name works here, sir." My chest tightened. "Yes, there is. Victoria Fernandez. She's been working here for weeks." She checked me in when I arrived. He shook his head. "Sir, I've been the manager here for 6 months. We've never had an employee named Victoria." I felt the room spinning. "That's impossible. I've seen her here every day. She works the front desk." He looked concerned now. "Sir, are you feeling all right? Would you like me to call someone?" I backed away from the desk. My heart was pounding. I ran to the elevator and went back to my room. I pulled out every document Miguel had given me. I started searching online. The law firm. Fake. The Malaysian Development Company. Didn't exist. The Batangas Resort. No permits. No registration. Nothing. I searched for Miguel's name. Nothing. Arturo. Nothing. Camila. Nothing. I looked up the hospital Victoria's mother had supposedly been treated at. I called them. "I'm trying to confirm a patient. Her name would have been admitted 3 weeks ago for stroke surgery." The nurse checked. "Sir, we have no record of any patient by that name." I felt bile rising in my throat. I sat on my bed for hours, just staring at the wall. Every conversation replayed in my mind. Every smile. Every touch. Every promise. It had all been a lie. Every single word. They had studied me. They had known exactly what I needed. A lonely widow, recently bereaved, emotionally vulnerable, financially comfortable. They had identified me probably before I even checked into the hotel. Victoria had never worked there. She had just been waiting for me. I whispered to the empty room. I knew the whole time. Because that's the truth I couldn't face. Some part of me had known. The red flags had been everywhere. But I'd ignored them. Because I'd wanted so desperately to believe. I'd wanted to matter again. To be desired. To be important. And they'd given me exactly what I wanted. Until there was nothing left to take. Monday morning I went to the police station. A tired-looking officer took my statement. He barely looked up from his paperwork. "How much did you lose?" I could barely say it. £495,000. He sighed. "Sir, we get cases like yours every week. Foreign men, romance scams, investment fraud, usually combined. They target recent widowers, divorcees, men traveling alone. They're very sophisticated operations." I felt numb. "Can you find them? Can you get my money back?" He looked at me with something like pity. "Honestly, probably not. These people use fake names, fake addresses, fake documents. By the time victims report it, they've already moved on to the next target. The money gets moved through multiple accounts and converted to cash. Even if we identify some of the perpetrators, recovering funds is nearly impossible. I just nodded. What else could I do? I sat in that police station for 2 hours giving my statement, describing Victoria, describing Miguel and Arturo and Camila. The officer wrote it all down, but I could see in his eyes that nothing would come of it. You should contact your bank, he said. Sometimes they can reverse international transfers if they're reported quickly enough. I knew it was pointless. The transfers had been weeks ago. But I called anyway. The bank confirmed what I already knew. The money was gone, withdrawn immediately upon arrival, converted to cash, untraceable. The representative was professionally sympathetic. I'm very sorry, Mr. Whitley. Unfortunately, once you authorize a transfer, there's very little we can do to recover it. I thanked her and hung up. I thought about Margaret, about our life together, about the house we'd bought in our 30s, about the careful budgeting, the modest holidays, the small luxuries we'd allowed ourselves after I made partner at the publishing house. We'd built that £500,000 over 40 years. Every pound carefully saved, every investment thoroughly researched, and I'd thrown it away in 6 weeks. For a smile, for a touch, for the feeling of being wanted. I wasn't robbed. I was seduced, and I'd let it happen. I'd made every decision, every transfer. No one had forced me. They'd simply given me what I wanted to hear. And I'd suspended every bit of critical thinking I'd developed over a lifetime. I'd spent 40 years evaluating manuscripts, assessing credibility, determining what was real and what was fiction, and I'd failed the most important test of my life. I packed my suitcase Monday evening. I booked a flight home for Tuesday morning. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. I saw an old man, a fool, someone who'd betrayed his own intelligence, his own wife's memory. I'd taken the life we'd built together and handed it to strangers because a beautiful woman had made me feel young again. The flight back to London was 17 hours. I didn't sleep. I just sat there replaying every conversation, every lie I'd believed, every warning sign I'd ignored. Victoria asking about my career. You must have such a good eye for truth and lies. She'd been mocking me from the beginning, testing how much I'd believe. And I'd failed every test. I'm back in London now. My flat feels smaller than I remembered, colder. The heating doesn't seem to work as well as it used to, or maybe I just feel colder inside. I haven't told my children the full story. My daughter called from Sydney, asking how my trip was. Fine, I said. Relaxing. She didn't push. My son hasn't called at all. We still aren't speaking. I told my accountant I'd made some bad investments. He was sympathetic, but practical. These things happen, Percival. The important thing is you still have your pension. You won't starve. You'll just need to be more careful going forward. I nodded and agreed, and didn't tell him that careful is all I'd been my entire life until I wasn't. I sold some things. Books mostly. First editions I'd collected over the years. Margaret's jewelry. Things she'd wanted to pass down to our daughter but I couldn't bear to look at anymore. I raised about £30,000. Combined with what little I had left, it's enough to survive. I won't be comfortable, but I'll survive. I don't trust my judgment anymore. Every decision feels suspect now. Should I buy this? Should I believe this person? Should I trust this statement? I second-guess everything. I've become paralyzed by my own stupidity. I can't even trust myself to choose what to have for dinner without wondering if I'm being deceived somehow. At night I replay the conversations. Victoria whispering, "You're special." Miguel saying, "You have such good discernment." Arturo calling me partner. Every word was calculated. Every gesture was planned. They had run this operation before, probably dozens of times. I was just another Mark, another lonely old man with money and emotional needs. I think about the precision of it. How they'd introduced people gradually, never too many at once. How they'd built credibility through each other. Miguel vouching for Arturo, Arturo vouching for Camila, Camila vouching for Miguel. A perfect circle of false legitimacy. How they'd mixed real intimacy with Victoria alongside the financial asks, making it feel like love and business were separate things. When really, it was all just business. The medical emergency was brilliant. I see that now. It shifted the dynamic from investment to rescue, made me feel like a hero, like I was saving a life, not just losing money. And it bonded Victoria to me emotionally in a way the business deals couldn't. After I'd saved her mother, how could I doubt her? How could I question anything she asked for? They'd studied me. That's what I keep coming back to. This wasn't random. They'd profiled me. Probably from the moment I'd booked the hotel. Recently widowed British man. Traveling alone. Professional background suggesting financial stability. They'd known exactly what kind of loneliness I was carrying. Exactly what emotional buttons to push. Victoria wasn't evil. I've tried to make her into a monster in my mind. But that doesn't fit. She was just good at her job. Better at her job than I ever was at mine. She'd read me perfectly, given me exactly what I needed to believe. And I'd paid her well for the performance. I lost £495,000 in 6 weeks. But that's not really what I lost. I lost my self-respect, my confidence, my belief that I was intelligent enough to protect myself. I lost the idea that I'd learned anything valuable in 66 years of life. I lost my wife's legacy, the life we'd built together. I took our careful, modest, responsible life and gambled it all away for the fantasy that I could be young and desired and important again. Some nights I wake up and check my email, hoping for a message from Victoria. Not to get the money back. I know that's gone. But maybe just to know it was real in some small way. That some moment between us was genuine. But there's never anything. She doesn't exist anymore. She never really did. I've thought about going back, hiring a private investigator, tracking them down. But what would be the point? The money is gone. The people I knew were characters. Actors playing roles. Finding them wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't make me smarter. It wouldn't undo the choices I made. People ask me about retirement, about my plans. I tell them I'm thinking about doing some consulting, maybe editing manuscripts freelance. The truth is, I don't have plans. I don't trust myself to make plans anymore. I just exist day to day, trying not to think too much about what I've done. The worst part isn't the money. It's the knowledge that I was capable of such profound stupidity. That when the right emotional levers were pulled, I abandoned everything I knew to be true. I'd spent my entire career analyzing stories, determining what was plausible, what was real, what was fabricated, and I'd failed to apply any of that to my own life. Margaret used to say I was too trusting, that I gave people too much credit. I'd always thought that was a virtue, a sign of optimism. But she was right. I wanted to believe in people. I wanted to believe in goodness. And that need made me vulnerable in ways I'd never understood. If I could go back and talk to the man who stepped off that plane in Manila, I don't know what I'd tell him. Don't trust Victoria? He wouldn't listen. He was too desperate for what she offered. Don't invest? He'd find a way to rationalize it. The truth is, that man wanted to believe so badly that no warning would have stopped him. I see him sometimes. That hopeful version of myself. Walking back from dinner with Victoria, smiling at his phone, transferring money and feeling important, and I feel such sadness for him, such pity. He thought he was building a new life. He thought he'd found love. He thought he was finally moving past his grief. He had no idea he was just funding his own destruction. I'm 76 years old now. Wait, no, I'm 66. I keep forgetting. Time feels strange now. Some days feel like years. Some weeks disappear entirely. I don't go out much. I order groceries online. I video call my daughter once a month. I tell her I'm fine. She believes me because she wants to. Just like I wanted to believe Victoria. The money is gone. That's just fact now. £495,000. I could list everything it represented. Every manuscript I edited. Every late night at the office. Every modest choice Margaret and I made to build our savings. But listing it doesn't change it. The money is gone, and it's never coming back. What I lost, though, really lost, was the belief that I was immune to my own loneliness. I thought I was too smart, too experienced, too cautious. But none of that mattered when someone made me feel seen. When Victoria looked at me like I mattered, I would have given her anything. And I did. I survive now. That's the best I can say. I wake up. I make coffee. I sit in Margaret's chair and stare out the window at the London rain. I survive, but I don't live. I don't trust. I don't hope. I just exist in this smaller, colder version of the life I used to have. And I know that I did this to myself. That's the part I can't escape. Not Victoria, not Miguel, not Arturo or Camila or any of them. Me. I made every choice. I authorized every transfer. I believed every lie because I wanted them to be true. And now I live with that knowledge every single day. That's the real cost. Not the money. The knowledge that when it mattered most, I failed myself completely.